One introduction RAWSEP view: the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the eco-design wood stove, and international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view: purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to residents against wood smoke emission particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents against wood smoke emission particulates, or RAWSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RAWSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, residents against wood smoke emission particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025 and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Webisode 57DHXZU November 29, 2025 The motivation of RFK Jr. to attack public health. In Webisode 57DHXZU 1 The motivation of RFK Jr. to attack public health. 2 How to recognize the health effects of air pollution exposure. 3 Minnesota, 4 West Virginia, 5 United Kingdom, 6 Europe, 7 Ukraine, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 headlines main content. 1 United States The motivation of RFK Jr. to attack public health. We need at least 2 scientific developments to deal with the future. We need a renewed push for vaccine updates and future development of vaccines. In order to deal with future pandemics, we need scientific monitoring leading to regulation, leading to elimination of dirty energy sources in order to slow climate change. United States tax dollars already collected, and what money will be collected in the future is needed to support scientific research, including vaccine research. Money has been withdrawn from scientific research and from government agencies that develop, regulate, and enforce clean air laws. Our tax dollars and money loaned to us that carries high interest rates paid to countries beginning with China is going to Republicans in the United States for absurd and often destructive projects that are personal in nature to the flawed individuals who now are allowed to lead the United States. What are we being distracted by? Right now, in the effort of the Public Broadcasting Service PBS to kowtow to the current Trump RFK Junior Administration, we are being given pap information and discussion about the erosion of our once strong vaccine program. And possibly next we will be given pap information about and pap discussion about the erosion of our clean air laws. What am I referring to? Last night on Washington Week, presented by the editor of The Atlantic, an Atlantic writer was highlighted who wrote a pap article about RFK Jr. The editor of RAWSEP does not have a subscription to The Atlantic, so has not read the article, but the discussion of the purported content of the article seemed to be about the psychology and motivations of RFK Jr. and his many actions destructive to medicine and science in the United States, which he is able to enact because of his unearned position at head of Health and Human Services for the United States. The Atlantic writer, at least at the roundtable discussion, put forward the RFK Jr. motivation to be an extension of his recovery from heroin addiction. According to the writer, RFK Jr. meets with recovery from addiction groups daily and counsels recovering heroin addicts. As a result of his heroin addiction, RFK Jr. has refocused his personal search over many decades for injection of heroin into his veins with a new focus on imposition of his personal anger against medical professionals onto the American people. What do we do as Americans with this information? Does this information illuminate the way for the rest of us? At least the panel of Washington Week did not waste time bemoaning and identifying with the absurd and irrational motivation of RFK Jr. The panel did mention that RFK Jr. is popular, or the most popular of the cabinet of Trump this year, that his political popularity that can shift like the wind, especially when it is merely based on hatred of medical professionals and those who would seek to protect public health. If the second cousin of RFK Jr. were profiled instead of RFK Jr. with his laughable motivation for attacking public health, we would see a truer and deeper motivation for any American to support public health. Tatiana Schlossberg is the granddaughter of JFK and the daughter of Caroline Kennedy. At the age of 35, she is facing terminal cancer, and at the same time she announced that this week she criticized her second cousin RFK Jr. as embarrassing because of his views. One quotation flashed on the screen during Washington Week was illuminating. On November 28, 2025, Tatiana Schlossberg shared her powerful essay titled "The Battle with My Blood" in the New Yorker. In this essay, she revealed her diagnosis of terminal cancer, specifically acute myeloid leukemia, and her experiences as a new mother during this challenging time. The candid reflections of Schlossberg on her health journey and the impact of her diagnosis on her family and future were central to her message. To their credit, the Atlantic staff was seemingly more concerned with public health than any competition with another publication when they shared that, quote, perhaps publications have to cooperate for the public good, just as we need a nationwide cooperative of doctors, researchers, hospitals, insurance companies, and drug manufacturers to align in continuing to provide what at least once was a preeminent healthcare system for the American people and align in improving that system, despite political winds that will hopefully blow in a completely opposite direction in the near future. 2 United States, how to recognize the health effects of air pollution exposure. RAWSEP views stating that there are certain groups that are more affected by air pollution may be comforting to those who are not yet older adults, but despite carefully explaining that some groups of people are more vulnerable than others to air pollution, this brief summation of health effects does alarmingly mention that short-term high-level exposure can cause this reduced lung function itself. We are all in this together. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Purple Air Newsletter, November 20th. 2025 Health effects of air pollution. Environmental contamination is not the only concern. Air pollution directly affects human health, and the level of risk varies based on several factors, including the length and intensity of exposure and the pollutant mixture present in the air. Older adults with age, the body becomes less capable of compensating for environmental stressors. As a result, air pollution can worsen heart disease and stroke lung conditions such as COPD and asthma. Diabetes source. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. Older adults and air quality. The nature of exposure. Short-term, high-level exposure. Brief exposures to elevated pollution levels can cause reduced lung function, respiratory function, worsened asthma symptoms. Long-term exposure. Chronic exposure increases the risk of diseases that develop slowly over time, including stroke, heart disease, COPD, cancer. Source: the World Health Organization, WHO. Air quality, energy, and health. Air pollution effects poses serious risks to human health. While some consequences are immediate, many develop gradually over years of exposure, making awareness and prevention critically important. Understanding how different pollutants impact you empowers individuals and communities to take meaningful action. 3 Minnesota, how fraud swamped the Minnesota social services system. On the Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, prosecutors say members of the Somali diaspora, a group with growing political power, were largely responsible. RAWSEP, View, the editor of RAWSEP, cherishes the reply of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to Trump unhinged accusations this week. Show us the I-files. Are 59 people in 3 plots who allegedly committed fraud representative of the 80,000 Somalis living in Minnesota? Are the fraud prevention safeguards which Governor Tim Walz has instituted robust enough to prevent future fraud? The editor of RAWSEP questions the projection of monetary corruption malfeasance that Trump is blatantly guilty of. Think of the $3 billion pullback of IRA funds to fund tax break for the rich onto others, and sweepingly onto particular ethnic groups. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against would smoke emission particulates. The New York Times, November 29, 2025. Federal prosecutors charged dozens of people with felonies, accusing them of stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from a government program meant to keep children fed during the COVID-19 pandemic. At first, many in the state saw the case as a one-off abuse during a health emergency. But as new schemes targeting the generous safety net programs of Minnesota came to light, state and federal officials began to grapple with a jarring reality. Over the last 5 years, law enforcement officials say scores of individuals made small fortunes by setting up companies that build state agencies for millions of dollars of social services that were never provided. Federal prosecutors say that 59 people have been convicted in those schemes so far, and that more than $1 billion in taxpayer money has been stolen in 3 plots they are investigating. That is more than Minnesota spends annually to run its Department of Corrections. The Minnesota fraud scandal stood out even in the context of rampant theft during the pandemic, when Americans stole tens of billions through unemployment benefits, business loans, and other forms of aid. According to federal auditors, Governor Tim Walz and fellow Democrats are being asked to explain how so much money was stolen on their watch. Many Somali Americans in Minnesota say the fraud has damaged the reputation of their entire community. Around 80,000 people. Critics of the Walz administration say that the fraud persisted, partly because state officials were fearful of alienating the Somali community in Minnesota. Governor Walz, who has instituted new fraud prevention safeguards, defended the actions of his administration. Is the Minnesota Scandinavian modeled system of robust safety net programs bankrolled by high taxes sustainable? Tens of thousands of Somali refugees arrived in Minnesota after their country descended into civil war in the 1990s. Ahmed Samatar, a professor at Macalester College who is a leading expert in Somali studies, said a reckoning over the fraud and its consequences for Minnesota was overdue. American society and the denizens of the state of Minnesota have been extremely good to Somali, said Dr. Samatar, who is Somali American. Dr. Samatar said that Somali refugees were raised in a culture in which stealing from the Somali dysfunctional and corrupt government was widespread. Minnesota, he said, proved susceptible to rampant fraud because it is so tolerant, so open, and so geared toward keeping an eye on the weak. Other Somali Americans who have nothing to do with social service agencies said they had come to feel under siege amid all the fraud allegations and political accusations. The actions of a small group have made it easier for people already inclined to reject us to double down, said Abdi Mohammed, a filmmaker in Minneapolis. The broader Somali community, hardworking, family-oriented, and deeply committed to Minnesota, is left carrying that burden. For West Virginia and Virginia, Huntington, West Virginia, and Dante and Pennington Gap, Virginia. Deeply demoralizing how Trump derailed the clean energy revival of coal country. Biden earmarked billions for former coal communities in Appalachia, and his successor Trump came and took it away. RAWSEP View, Trump is intent on protecting dirty energy industries, even to the point of starting up dirty energy industries when the clean energy of wind and solar is cheaper for consumers in 2025. And in addition to that, Trump is illegally eliminating the social programs that train former coal workers for new jobs in a clean energy economy. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. The Guardian, November 29, 2025. For a moment, Jacob Hanna saw an unprecedented opportunity to make Appalachia great again. In 2022, the Biden administration earmarked billions of dollars to help revitalize and strengthen former coal communities. The objective was to lay down building blocks for the region to transition from extractive industries like coal and timber to a hub for solar and other advanced energy technologies with a view to long-term economic, climate, and social resilience. But on his first day in office, Trump scrapped the Biden clean energy and environmental programs. A fifth-generation Appalachian man has been crisscrossing the country on a mission to raise philanthropic capital to limit the economic damage caused by the Trump administration taking a chainsaw to Biden-era grants. Hanna runs Coalfield Development, a nonprofit organization headquartered in Huntington focused on rebuilding the Southwest Virginia economy and social fabric through workforce training, job creation, and revitalizing abandoned buildings and mines in some of the most forgotten corners of coal country. Coalfield has trained over 4,000 people, including many formerly incarcerated and or in addiction recovery, over the past 15 years in everything from solar installation to drywalling and first aid. Yet historically, federal grants for community regeneration efforts in Appalachia have been mostly top-down, project-based, and short-lived. The 2022 cash injection came through the Inflation Reduction Act (IRA), the Biden landmark climate and infrastructure legislation, and was designed to help revitalize and strengthen former coal communities over the long haul. It was the largest investment in Appalachia since the war on poverty of the 1960s under Lyndon Johnson. In response, Coalfield Development spearheaded a coalition of universities, unions, nonprofits, businesses, and local governments to create collective infrastructure and capacity enabling coal-impacted rural communities across the U.S. access more than $90 million of the historic IRA investment. Rural communities in Appalachia were on the verge of breaking ground on projects when the grants were paused or terminated by the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, led by the billionaire Trump donor Elon Musk. The wholesale cull included the $3 billion Environmental and Climate Justice Program created in the IRA to tackle the climate crisis and environmental harms at a local level. A few grants have since been reinstated, but are subject to long delays in part because so many staff at federal agencies were forced out by DOGE. Many remain the subject of litigation across Appalachia. People who believe in Trump will be hit hard by his wholesale cuts to Medicaid, Veterans Affairs, food aid, and education, among other public services. Simultaneously, the region is scrambling to save projects that would improve resilience and bring jobs. It is a race against the clock, according to Hannah, to find enough money to keep afloat and help people keep faith. The funding was committed by Congress, so we know the law is on our side and that we will eventually win back some of these grants. Hannah said one objective was probably to remove confidence in the system, so we need to outlast what is a game of cash flow and the battle of morale. 5 United Kingdom UK budget plan calms markets and Labour faithful. Will it appeal to voters? The plan presented by the Chancellor of the Exchequer Rachel Reeves called for spending increases and higher taxes on the wealthy and the middle class. RAWSEP View, the editor of RAWSEP, cherishes the video of Keir Starmer playing the 6-7 game with school children this week. The wish fulfillment of the writer of this article seems to be a drubbing of Labour in the spring 2026 elections. And what would be the purported cause of voter unhappiness in 2026? Taxing the rich, deciding to cancel a subsidy for dirty oil for home heating, and then only after being under pressure taking back that measurement to increase clean air, providing rebates for clean energy heat pumps, defending Ukraine. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. The New York Times, November 26, 2025, when the top economic official in Britain, Rachel Reeves, presented the budget of the government on Wednesday. It was a make-or-break moment for her. No less on the hook was the man seated behind her, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, whose future may also depend on how voters and the financial markets judge her plan. The early response to Ms. Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, suggested that she threw Starmer at least a political lifeline. The tax and spending increases she announced went down well with Labour members of Parliament, who had become restive with a government hobbled in its first 16 months by policy reversals. The markets also seemed satisfied. The pound rose against the dollar, while the borrowing costs of the UK declined, sparing Starmer the backlash that sank one of his conservative predecessors, Liz Truss, when she rolled out a budget with sweeping tax cuts in 2022. RAWSEP interjection: the Liz Truss tax cuts of 2022 were designed to benefit only the wealthy and were reversed before Liz Truss was forced to step down as Prime Minister in 2025. Faced with unforgiving fiscal constraints, Rachel Reeves announced tax increases on both wealthy and middle-income people. Farmers brought tractors to Trafalgar Square in central London on Wednesday to demand that Ms. Reeves scrap inheritance taxes on family farms. RAWSEP interjection: RAWSEP wonders if the gas to get to London was provided by the wealthy, who exhorted farmers to act to protect the interests of the wealthy from tax cuts. Back to the article excerpt: the Labour Party trails the right-wing party against immigration, the Reform UK, by double digits in most opinion polls. Starmer does not have to call a general election until 2029. The respectable reception of the budget by Labour lawmakers and the markets would likely quiet any talk about elections to be held next spring. Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform, claimed that the budget would penalise working people to pay for wasteful welfare programs. He called it an assault on aspiration and an assault on saving. While the new taxes will affect people across multiple income levels, the budget does target wealthier people. Ms. Reeves announced a surtax known as a mansion tax that would be levied on property worth more than £2 million or $2.6 million. She had earlier tweaked inheritance taxes, which brought angry farmers on tractors into London to protest. Among the most political decisions of Ms. Reeves was eliminating the cap that had allowed parents to claim tax credits for only their first 2 children, not all of them. After Ms. Reeves took her seat, a smiling Starmer put his arm on her shoulder. Starmer has kept Ms. Reeves close even after she deepened the political woes of the government with the tax increases in her first budget last year and ignited a crisis by canceling a subsidy of heating oil. RAWSEP interjects that heating oil is a dirty energy source, and the UK government has provided rebates for clean energy heat pumps. And market reaction to canceling a subsidy for dirty energy was probably the dirty energy industry reacting and influencing the markets in a coercive way. Heating oil used by older people may be a sentimental but irrational desire to avoid change, even if that change will make the lives of older people longer and healthier as long as they live. Back to the article excerpt: expenses for older people. The government later reversed the plan, while Ms. Reeves has burrowed into economic policy. Starmer has increasingly taken on the role of a statesman traveling the world. He is spearheading efforts to marshal a European coalition of the willing to defend Ukraine and travel to Washington to try to talk President Trump out of imposing tariffs on Britain. Foreign policy successes might serve as a reminder of the danger that external shocks like the Trump trade policy pose to the economy of Britain. This will probably be okay with the markets today. 6. Europe, Estonia, Germany, France, the United Kingdom. The weak Europe realized it stands alone against Russian expansionism. The trusting view of Russia held by U.S. leaders is the diametric opposite of the opinion held in European capitals. RAWSEP view: it has always been known that Trump favors the dictator Putin. The embarrassment to the U.S. of having elected Trump continues this week. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. The Guardian, November 29, 2025. Kaja Kallas, the European Union foreign policy chief, asked her officials this week to dig up the number of times Russia had in its various guises invaded other states in the 20th and 21st centuries. The answer that came back was 19 states on 33 occasions. Kallas, the former Estonian prime minister, was not just indulging in some form of historical mathematics. She was seeking to make a point that lies at the heart of the dispute between the U.S. and Europe over the Ukraine future, a dispute that has again revealed the chasm across the Atlantic about the true nature of the Russian regime. Putin will come back for more. A similar warning was made this week by the German Foreign Minister Johann Wadefuhl, who said our intelligence services are telling us urgently Russia is at least creating the option of a war against NATO by 2029 at the latest. Putin is recruiting nearly 1 new division a month, divisions that are undoubtedly also targeting us at the EU. At NATO, the French President Emmanuel Macron has described Russia as a constant destabilizing power, trying to revise the borders to extend his power. In short, he is a threat to Europeans. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer told MPs, we know that without that deterrence, Putin has the ambition to go again, and he will go again, and we must guard against that with its overarching view that Russia under its current leadership would always represent a threat. The key European focus has been to ensure any agreement prevents Russia from further military aggression. The absolute condition for a good peace is a series of very robust security guarantees and not guarantees only on paper, said Macron. Some of those guarantees could be provided by a deployment of the so-called coalition of the willing. Starmer insists that plans are in place covering capability coordination and command structure, but it is unclear whether the U.S. will provide any additional guarantees. 3 Ukrainian red lines have been reserved for further talks, conceding key parts of Donbass currently under Ukrainian control, accepting restrictions on its army and NATO forever barring Ukraine from membership. The damage to the transatlantic alliance piles up. Europe now has to realize it must confront the Russian question alone. Unlike in Alaska this time, the U.S. was lured into signing up to the Russian plans to remake Europe in the interests of Russia, and so doing, according to French historian François Tom, the U.S. made itself complicit in the dismantlement of international law. It is possible this Trump-U.S. initiative will fizzle out as Putin rejects the revised terms next week and the war grinds on after distracting and weakening Ukrainian morale that is already strained by allegations of corruption. Some figures, such as Kallas, insist that Russia can be brought to breaking point as it runs out of money, especially if Europe finds a lawful way to give Ukraine a reparations loan, drawing on frozen Russian central bank assets worth 210 billion euros. Trump may be planning a second summit with Vladimir Putin in Budapest, Hungary. 7 Ukraine, and firing his number 2. Zelensky loses both a negotiator and an enforcer. Andriy Yermak had ensured internal discipline in the wartime politics of Ukraine. He also led the Ukraine peace negotiations, which now must go on without him. RAWSEP view it is true that $100 million directed for the personal use of individuals rather than for needed infrastructure improvements makes the lives of average Ukrainians harder, but being bombarded and killed by Russian drones is worse than any purported alleged corruption charges brought primarily to weaken the bargaining position of Ukraine in any peace talks. Excerpts edited for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against with smoke emission particulates. The New York Times, November 29, 2025. The President Volodymyr Zelensky dismissal of his longtime right-hand man opens a window for sweeping change inside Ukraine, leaving Zelensky without a figure to enforce discipline within the Ukraine competitive politics, as Russia always looks for seems to exploit the departure of the aide Andriy Yermak on Friday amid a corruption investigation also removes the Ukraine lead negotiator from difficult peace talks to end the largest war in Europe in generations. But as a Ukrainian delegation was scheduled to continue negotiations this weekend in the United States now without Yermak, Ukrainian officials insisted that the dynamics around the talks would not be fundamentally changed. Detectives on Friday morning had searched the Yermak home after charging figures close to both the president and Yermak with embezzling about $100 million from contractors to the state nuclear company Energoatom in a vast kickback scheme. His firing eases worries in Ukraine that Russia or the United States will use the corruption scandal as leverage to push Ukrainian officials make painful concessions in talks. Opposition political party European Solidarity had issued a statement on Thursday demanding the Yermak removal from the negotiating team. For this reason, anti-corruption activists say Yermak and another negotiator implicated in the corruption case, Rustem Umerov, the head of the National Security and Defense Council, faced conflicts of interest in negotiations over provisions in the peace plan, such as a proposed amnesty for wartime crimes. Such a condition could cover the investigations targeting them. The Yermak departure is a seismic event in the Ukraine wartime politics by systematically sidelining rivals in the cabinet of ministers and the presidential office. He had one broad behind-the-scenes power. He was a vice president, a prime minister, and a chief of staff rolled into one. Analyst said anti-corruption activists cheered his departure, with Yermak no longer around to ride herd on domestic policy, keep a lid on power struggles within the military, and oversee peace negotiations. The Zelensky political control may weaken. Zelensky has said he will consult with Ukrainian politicians and generals before appointing a replacement. In an interview Friday, Yermak said he planned to join the military and serve on the front lines. 8 headlines. The New York Times, November 29, 2025. Aviation Airbus orders software update for A320 jets. The New York Times, Canada as trade talks stall. Carney moves to shield Canada from Trump tariffs. The New York Times, consumers' opinion goodbye price tags. Hello dynamic pricing. The New York Times, Croatia pollution. Dubrovnik, known for its beauty, faces a mound of new trash. The New York Times, Honduras Latin American leaders face both Trump and voters deported by the U.S. The New York Times, Honduras Trump to pardon one Orlando Hernandez, Honduran ex-leader convicted in drug case. The New York Times, internet non-alcoholic drink 5 podcasts to help you savor coffee. The New York Times, internet opinion, why we need fairy tales in the digital age. The New York Times, Minnesota, how fraud swamped the Minnesota social services system. On the Tim Walls watch. The New York Times, New York artificial intelligence. New York law could set stage for the next big battleground for artificial intelligence, AI regulation. The New York Times, RFK Junior lack of knowledge of medicine and science, a different type of dementia, is changing what is known about cognitive decline. The New York Times, RFK Junior lack of knowledge of medicine and science, gene therapy offer a cure for babies with the deadly bubble boy disease. The New York Times, South Africa and Ukraine, South Africans were promised job, but ended up going to war for Russia. The New York Times, Trump actions opinion, a pardoned Turkey, an unpardonable man. The New York Times, Trump actions opinion, the Trump greedy Thanksgiving. The New York Times, Trump ballroom inside the Trump push to make the White House ballroom as big as possible. The New York Times, TV for detectives on TV, the messiest case is often at home. The New York Times, Ukraine and firing his no to Zelensky loses both a negotiator and an enforcer. The New York Times, Ukraine, Russia bombards Ukraine for nearly 10 hours in a deadly assault. The New York Times, Ukraine, the Ukrainians stuck in the new gulag of Russia. The New York Times, United Kingdom, UK budget plan calms markets and Labour faithful, will it appeal to voters? The New York Times, University Trump extortion, Northwestern agrees to deal with Trump administration. The New York Times, 9 headlines. The New York Times, November 28, 2025. Cat voices to get the attention of a man. Meow harder. The New York Times, consumers, how Gen Z is shopping. The New York Times, consumers, shoppers head into the Holidays with spending plans intact. The New York Times Democrats why Nadine Menendez still has not visited her husband in prison. The New York Times France Louvre raising ticket prices for visitors not from Europe. The New York Times Hondurans fear unrest ahead of election as Trump endorses a candidate. The New York Times Myanmar, did the Myanmar junta demolish scam centers just for show? The New York Times RFK Junior lack of knowledge of medicine and science snap helping families put Thanksgiving dinner on the table. The New York Times Ukraine home of the Ukraine lead negotiator is searched in corruption case. The New York Times Ukraine Trump cut Europe out of Ukraine talks. Here is how Europe pushed back. The New York Times 10 headlines. The Guardian November 29, 2025 aviation Airbus issues major A320 recall after Madeira incident grounds planes disrupting global travel. Airbus. The Guardian Europe climate change pollution including air pollution hastening climate change revealed. The Europe water reserves drying up due to climate breakdown. Water. The Guardian Europe the weak Europe realized it stands alone against Russian expansionism. Ukraine. The Guardian Republicans J.D. Vance Trump Jr. DeSantis possible Republican contenders for 2028 run. Republicans. The Guardian Republicans leaked files show far right influences among Project 2025 applicants. Project 2025 The Guardian Trump Biden vengeance. Trump says he plans to cancel most of the Biden executive orders. Trump. The Guardian Ukraine. The Guardian view on Ukraine peace talks. Putin is taking Trump for another ride on the Kremlin carousel. Editorial. The Guardian Ukraine. The Russia-Ukraine peace deal is not a loss, nor is it a victory. Stephen Wertheim. The Guardian Ukraine corruption scandal threatens the Zelensky special relationship with top aide. Ukraine. The Guardian Ukraine war briefing 2 killed and dozens wounded as Russia launches another overnight attack on Kiev. Ukraine. The Guardian United Kingdom the admin why it is not easy to rename streets called after Prince Andrew. Local government. The Guardian United Kingdom move over Murdoch. Will Lord Rothermere be the most powerful media mogul in Britain? Viscount Rothermere. The Guardian United Kingdom women what could be putting young women off marriage? It really is not that much of a mystery. Nawaz Dolan. The Guardian West Virginia deeply demoralizing how Trump derailed the clean energy revival of coal country coal. The Guardian 11 headlines. The Guardian November 28, 2025 consumers amid instability and fear in the Trump economy. Americans are cutting holiday spending. U.S. economy. The Guardian Denmark sets up night watch to monitor Trump after Greenland row. Greenland. The Guardian Ukraine the 28-point peace plan for Ukraine may be dead, but Trump still will not stop Putin. Dmytro Kuleba. The Guardian 12 headlines. Other media November 28, 2025 Trump actions women. Trump niece explains why Donald Trump is lashing out at female reporters.
Red Green Fox here. The quick red green fox jumped over the barriers to clean air. Red Green Fox here. Ready to sing to you the names of the 2025 major wood-burning biomass industry subsidy opponents. 1. Biofuel Watch. 2. Bulkley Valley Stewardship Coalition of British Columbia, Canada. 3. Kommite Schoen Luft, which means Beautiful Air Committee in German. 4. Dogwood Alliance. 5. Equity Group Foundation, nicknamed EGF. 6. Environmental Paper Network, nicknamed EPN. 7. Natural Resources Defense Council, nicknamed NRDC. 8. Prakaunia Narzek Wisistik Istit, which means Workshop for All Beings in Polish. 9. Rachel Carson Council. 10. Solutions for Our Climate, nicknamed SFOC.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. RAWSEP view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions. Yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut down and burn tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom. The Eco-Design Wood Stove International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view purple air PM2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.